Hi, I'm Anna and welcome to October's Art Club. Now this month is October and October is all about birds. It's a brilliant time to look around and find all the birds coming back into your garden, looking for the bird feeders and tapping on your window reminding you to fill them up. It's a great month for migratory birds visiting our shores here in the UK, and especially down here in Devon we get a lot of migratory birds. Also, we've been doing a river project, which I've been shouting about quite a lot over the last month, and what we've seen a lot of this month is these guys. So this is what we're going to be drawing today. You don't have to draw a kingfisher, you can draw any bird you like. So let's get going. So what we're going to do first is think about the shape of the bird, and this is what is really important because the shape of the bird makes it really obvious what type of bird it is. Now, kingfishers are quite a strange shaped bird. If I was going to look at this as a collection of shapes, there's almost like a teardrop shape. Their heads are almost like a little rectangle and they've got really long beaks. I mean, if you measure, and this is what you'll see artists doing every so often, so the beak is that long, the head is the same length. So when you're drawing something, it might feel like you're drawing something that looks ridiculous, but actually you might find that, that actually the proportions are right. So if I'm thinking about how long that beak is going to be, I'm going to mark on the paper quite heavy so you can actually see. So that beak is going to be that long. The head, obviously, we've said that I'm going to use the head as almost like, well, no, I'm going to use the beak as a measuring device. So beak, head, and how long is it from, let's put one, about 2.5 from the top to the bottom. So its head starts about there, 1, 2, and about a half. So it's quite a short bird, really. And then we've got its little post that it's sitting on. So I'm always measuring when I'm looking at that. So its eye is level with the post. Its eye is level with the beak as well. So I need to make sure I get that right. It's got quite a long flat head and it goes down at an angle. And then you've got this teardrop shape. So there's its little rectangular head. Make its little teardrop shape a bit bigger, I think, because I want to make sure I've got enough space for the wing there. That's probably about right. Little foot, you're going to make about, where does its foot come out? It's going to be that shape actually. At this stage there's a lot of extra lines, but that is absolutely fine because that means that I'm more likely to get it right. It is absolutely completely legitimate, can't even say the word today, to trace. There is absolutely nothing wrong with it. If you are worried that your bird is going to come out a bit wonky and you want to make life easy, I would trace it. What you can do, if you've got a picture that you don't mind destroying the other side of, you can actually use your pencil to do this on the other side, then put your picture on top of your paper and just draw around the outline. And what that will do is that will give you almost like a line, an outline that you can then work around. Surprisingly big claws, these little guys. So he's sitting on his little post. His post is about the width of the beak. So he's sitting on a post like that. So I've got a rough shape of a kingfisher now. I'm not going to add in loads and loads of tiny details at this point. What I am going to do is start chucking a bit of paint on it because it's quite nice to just throw paint on in quite an expressive way and then come to the outlines later down the line. So I'm going to put my bird picture over there. I'm going to use watercolour today because watercolour is my medium of choice. You'll notice I haven't got rubber out at all. There are wrong lines all over this. There's a bird line here that's not right. I changed where its stomach was. If you are using a medium that rubs that you can rub out through, like watercolour, then that is absolutely fine. It doesn't matter. If you're using a medium where you are not going to be able to rub out through it, you might want to take out some of those extra lines now. Let's just make sure you can see everything you want to see. There we go. Okay, we can see everything. That's great. So what I will tend to do, let's see if we can find the right colour. That's not a bad colour, is it? I'd say it's more sort of foxy brown than that. Let's put in a bit of brown. And what I want to do today is use wet in wet. And what that means is I'm putting the colour on really, really loosely, really, really kind of messily, wherever I can see it. I'm going to pick up a little bit more colour so I can add. There he goes. And things will blur into other things. Wet in wet just means that you are allowing the colours to merge and not worrying too much about things that are oh, that's really not the right green, is it? Let's add some blue to that. You're not worrying about colours that merge into one another and what colours they will make. It's quite a nice way of working for things like clouds and skies, and I'm going to allow to some extent that to happen on here as well, but not too much, because what I want to do, you can see here some of this colour is merging, and that's kind of okay. We'll just put a little bit down there. There's a little birdie. Now there are some areas that are a bit more greeny blue, so I'm going to add in a little bit of that. So I'm just putting this into the wet paint. That bit's quite green. And then actually it goes towards like a grey sort of colour. So let's see if I can get something a little bit greyer going on here. Interestingly, I suspect if I mix these two colours, there we go. If I mix these two colours together, I get a grey, a greeny sort of grey, and that might do okay. Not quite the right colour for the beak, but we'll have a bit of a play with that in a minute. So you can see how kind of quick and dirty this is. I'm not worrying about things plopping into other things. Let's get some of that grey going on. So Payne's grey I think is probably quite a good choice for the little beak. And I'm using a big flat brush here, but you could use whatever brush you've got about. You could also do this in crayons. You could do it in, well, anything you like really. You just want to get a bit of colour on it. Right, let's make a little bit of sort of mossy green. An interesting colour that. I think it's what I've got is way too dark. I think it needs a little bit more. That's better. I'll just put them on this little post. I haven't mixed the paint together very well, so I'm getting hints of different colours coming through. And again, I'm just using it all really wet. And his little post is quite, it's like a pale brown. That'll do. We're not that interested in the post, are we? Let's face it. It's all about the bird. Okay, let's have a look. Right, so our little bird is sitting here. Now he's got some white bits on him. You might notice I haven't done anything with those. There is a reason for that. It's because it's really easy to lose the whitest bits. I am going to put a tiny bit of orangey colour there. And also his eye, I say he, it could be a she. I think they are broadly similar, kingfishers. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the eye for now, and put that in later with a pen, because I can see that going horribly wrong if I try and do it with a brush this size. Just going to tidy up around there a little bit. It's got this interesting speckly pattern on him, so I might see if I can persuade the paint to do that a little bit. There we go. It might not want to, we'll see. That's just the same brush with a little bit of water on it. Okay, now I think he needs to dry, so what we'll do is we'll just park him to one side and let him dry out, and then we will put on the next layer. Okay, so our kingfisher, our watercolour kingfisher is dry. I'm going to have a bit of a play with one of these today because I've had them in my art box for absolutely ages. This is a Lyra Aqua Brush Duo. It's got two ends. Tombow do a similar one. It is not waterproof, which is why it's not getting, it hasn't had a lot of love from me basically, because I like to use waterproof brush pens, and as far as I'm aware this one isn't. However, because I'm not putting any more wet things, any more wet media on this, I can use this quite safely. Now, if you haven't seen one of these before, I will show you what they're like. I haven't got anything to show you on, it's going to have to be on here, but that's fine because I'm going to do a little bit of drawing on it anyway. The brush end is quite a broad thing, and then you've got a little tiny, like almost like a fine liner at the other end, and they come in different colours. So I have black ones, the Tombow ones I've got some grey ones as well. So when you're putting in markings on your bird, brush pens are quite fun, but you need to go quite lightly because you don't want to lose all that lovely texture that you've got. So I can see that this little guy has got almost like stripes going down to here. It's quite a bold pen, but as I say, because it's a brush pen, you can really determine how you want to use it. Is completely up to you. So you can make very, very tiny fine lines with it if you tip it on end, or you can go in a bit harder. It's quite nice for feathers. I'm saying a lot today. A lot of umming going on. Right, let's have a look at this. So we've got, it's quite fluffy down here. So I need to keep it super light. So the lighter the bird, the fluffier the bird, the lighter you want to keep that, because otherwise you will lose that fluffiness. We might put in some fluff later. There's little toes, claws rather, not toes. There we go. Maybe they are toes. I don't know. Do birds have toes? Answers on a postcard. Now, this is why I left the eye to this point, because the eye is actually a heck of a lot easier to do with a pen. So if you are drawing an eye, make sure that you leave some white space on the eye, because that is what makes it look alive. If you forget to do that, you might have to find a white pen or something to do it with, because it will look funny without it. And that's true of all living things. You always want to leave, it's called a catch light. So we've got his longer beak on the top, we've got the smaller beak underneath. We've got this pattern going up here. And it's just putting on little bits, little details that make it obvious what it is. I mean, you can already see what this is. You don't need me to do any more to this to know it's a kingfisher, but this is the point where we're playing and having a bit of fun. So I should just carry on. The moss I'm going to put in, and you can see now this is why I like brush pens. This is why I thought this might be quite a good pen for this particular bird, because I can do quite a textured sort of, there's the wood, and I'm just allowing the pen to move about, make a few of these little lines. Whoops, there it goes. It's got this interesting sort of spot pattern on him there. Now, for my money, he's not orange enough, so the next thing we're going to do is actually bring a bit more orange to the party. I'm not going to put too much on this twig thing, perch, because it's not really the main thrust of the painting. We just need it to be there so he isn't floating in midair. So that's what I'm going to be doing with that. I will just show you the other end so that you've got an idea of what it does. So for finer lines, this is really quite a nice. So if I want to break up the edges of his wings a little bit, maybe puts a little bit of. Birds tend to be much more downy on their undersides than they are anywhere else. So if you're doing that, add a little bit of fluff in there is not going to hurt. And just bolster that eye bit a little bit, and there. Now he looks a bit more like a lean, mean hunting machine, which is what he is. We've seen a lot of these on our river, and they move so fast. There, okay. So that's that layer done. As I say, I'm not going to put anything else wet over the top of that. They are lovely pens to use. They're really, really good for sketching out and about, but you want to get your watercolour or your wet media on first. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pick up some little highlights and some pops of colour, and that will be the last layer. Okay, so what we're going to do now is have a bit of a play with the top layer. Now, I am an absolute sucker for these boxes of crayons. I love the fact they've all got funny names. Actually, these haven't. These have got very, very sensible names, but sometimes you find they've got quite interesting names like macaroni cheese. So these colours are nice and bright and bold. I'm going to use them to just add a little bit of interest over the top. So I've got a couple of colours that might work. Always test if you're not quite sure. I mean, those three look broadly similar, but they won't be. So you always want to, throw them all over the paper. There's no harm in testing things. So you can see those three are nowhere near the same colour, but they're all quite useful colours. There's also a brown I might use. And I think there is a turquoisey sort of, that's a good one. Oh yes, we like that. Could even possibly use the white. What else we got? We got blue and indigo. Indigo might be interesting. No, indigo not the right colour. It's really hard to tell until you test some of these out. That one could work, but probably won't. And that's a nice one. Okay, so I've got a few colours now that I'm happy to use, and I'm going to start just laying those on very gently. Put the rest of them over here. Well, let's face it, it's a kingfisher. It's all about blue and orange, isn't it? So this will enable me to add in what I'd describe as texture at this point, to fill in any gaps that I've left maybe. This one is a nice and if there are areas where I think, no, actually I didn't want that orange there, crayons are brilliant for filling in gaps. So we'll get his little, there's a really light colour there actually, isn't there? I wonder if I can get some of that going on with the, not brilliant with the white, a little bit, don't need much. His beak, I I think I'd like something a bit darker for that, so I might actually use a little bit of the black crayon. And I might also use a little bit of that on the top of his head as well, because I'm just lightly shading in bits that I can see are grayer, really. At this stage, you're just playing. You've got the bulk of the information done. You're just having a bit of fun. Let's have a go with that. The brown and the orange. So the brown, I can see that there's quite a bit of brown here. The nice thing about crayon, if you're using it on textured paper, it picks up the texture in the paper a bit like an oil pastel would do. The downside of crayon, obviously, is that you can't rub it out if you get it wrong. And also, just so you can remember this, you can't put anything over the top of crayon. I think it gives some quite nice sort of feather textures here. Now you might realise at this point that I haven't rubbed out any of those lines that I got wrong at the beginning. How many of them can you see now? I'm not even going to bother. The only one I might rub out is that bit. We'll see. We'll see how I feel. Now, here we go. We've got some nice feathers going on now, and our little bird's starting to look looking a little bit happier there. Oh, I've broken it. Why does this happen every time I try and make a video? I snap all my art materials. Okay, the other thing I might do, actually, because I've got, oh, let's get that out from under there, is add a bit more interesting green to the post. Quite like crayons. I did have a massive box. This was 24. I did actually have like a 48 box. They're a bit of a thing. Vastly underrated in art, I think. I think the easiest way, if you want to have a load of fun and not worry too much about stuff, get some kids' art materials. Just put a little bit of brown. Again, this is watercolour paper, as always, because that's my favourite stuff to use, and it does pick up texture so nicely. So you can see here, I've got this lovely sort of wood texture happening with no effort whatsoever on my part. I think that might be all he needs. I've got a last little look. There's a bit of black along there. I'll put in a little bit of that. That'll do. There he is. Rightio, so that's the end of the video for this month, and I hope you had a bit of fun playing along and drawing along with me. I'd be very interested to see what you have been drawing, so if you've drawn something, another kingfisher, maybe something completely different, send me a picture. I always love to see what people get up to. It's Sidmouth's Guides on Instagram or Anna Brewster Art on Facebook, and I will see you in November for next month's art club. Bye!